what kind of conspiracies or governments involved? Oh, I got one. The kidnapping of Christopher Olunik. This is some really weird crap. Nearly 10 years ago, the son of a Polish businessman was kidnapped in his own house. He was then ended by the kidnappers after more than 2 years being held as hostage. And now the weird crap starts. The three suspected kidnappers took their life in jail, one after another. They were held in a 24-hour monitored cell. After 10 years of investigation, police found out that Christopher was probably helping kidnappers and instructing them, while everyone was thinking that he spent those 2 years in captivity bound to a basement wall with a chain. Recently, police also found blood in Christopher's house. And I mean lots of blood. Somebody there was badly wounded, but who? And who is covering the trails? There is a possibility that the Olunik family is lying about the house monitoring and is hiding the recordings, aggravating the investigation. The investigation was sabotaged multiple times. There is an internal investigation about the investigation. Those are just a few facts I remember. I don't think that we will ever discover the truth. 2 United Kingdom conspiracies. David Kelly, weapons_expert and expert on biological warfare, was asked to proofread parts of the dossier which led the UK to go to war with Iraq. He had serious doubts about some of the claims in it and leaked information to reporters. Later, he was found dead due to a slit to the left wrist and overdose of painkillers. The evidence relating to his death was covered up, and some doctors questioned whether there was enough proof to deem it suicide. Some people believe he was targeted by the government for leaking information. Harold Wilson, a socialist prime minister of the UK, was targeted by MI5 to lose the 1974 election. It's alleged that they released damaging information to journalists leading up to the election. There is also evidence MI5 bugged the prime minister's study room during this period. 3. Some of the conspiracy theories they have in Spain. Former President Felipe González was Mr. X, the code name for the leader of a clandestine terrorist death squad of the police or military or government called GAL, anti-terrorist liberation groups, who targeted and executed members of ETA. Official propaganda paints King Juan Carlos I as a savior of the homeland after his handling of the failed coup d'état by the fascist sectors of the military in Spain on February 23, 1981. Conspiracy theorists say he was behind the coup d'état and that he chickened out when he saw it was going to fail. After all, he was designated King of Spain by dictator Franco himself. Much like JFK, King Juan Carlos I of Spain is the protagonist of a number of urban legends in his country. Some of the country's most famous pop singers, like Barbara Rey or Paloma San Basilio, Warning, Spanish Kitsch, were rumored to be his mistresses. He loves to go incognito in his Harley Davidson to some famous girl houses in Madrid, etc. Much like a local Bill Murray, many people claim that a random biker helped them or picked them up on the road only to discover he was the king himself. Story 4, Aum Shinrikyo, and the seismic event in Western Australia. Probably an earthquake, possibly a test of a nuclear weapon by the Japanese cult responsible for the sarin gas attacks on the Tokyo subway. Also, there is some speculation that the Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania was committed by more than one gunman, or was used by someone as a way to reduce civilian firearm ownership, possibly to allow an enemy nation to more easily invade Australia. In my opinion, the last reason seems fairly unlikely due to our tiny population. Story 5. In Russia, there is a recurring theme amongst internet users in which they will claim there are no settlements outside of Moscow. They go further on to say that this land has been made uninhabitable by man-made disasters. These disasters are commonly stated to be radioactive contamination of soil and oil pipeline spills. It is speculated the outskirts of the city are guarded by former KGB agents, and those that contradict this are simply agents that are undercover attempting to subvert this line of thinking. Lost cosmonauts, on the other hand. Story 6. Well, in 1986, the Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme, was assassinated on a February night during a walk home from a movie theater. And as the murderer was never caught. One man, Christer Pettersson, was actually tried and convicted at first, but later found not guilty after an appeal. He is not alive today. The speculations run wild. The fact that Palme was not afraid to make enemies does not make things easier. A social democrat, he was a well-known critic of the Vietnam War, outspoken against the apartheid regime, etc. And in Swedish right-wing circles, particularly within the police and the military, rumors circulated that he was a Soviet spy. So the list of suggested murderers is almost endless. Story 7. I live in Poland right now, and there is the thing about the Smolensk catastrophe going on right now. Short version. The Polish president and a lot of other public figures died when attempting to land on a military airport in Smolensk a few years back. The previous ruling party got it into their head that the accident was a conspiracy by Russians, Germans, and their own slightly more liberal current ruling party in various combinations. The most interesting theory was that the Russians sent out a battalion of soldiers to the airfield with camping cookers to boil water and create the fog that caused the plane to hit the trees on the side. Because Russians. Story 8. The Gunpowder Plot. A group of Catholic conspirators decided to blow the F out of the Protestant British House of Parliament, including James I. Thank God they didn't succeed because chances are if they had, there would have been a backlash against the Catholic community. James was more diplomatic. Seeing as the perpetrators were caught and no one died, he decided to calm the public and say not all Catholics are that insane. Good move, King. Good move. Also, Area 51 and JFK are both good examples of American conspiracies. But I'd look into Project MK Ultra. Story 9, there was actually a pretty major cover-up by the Australian government. The Children Overboard affair was an Australian political controversy involving public allegations by Howard government ministers in October 2001, in the lead-up to a federal election, that seafaring asylum seekers had thrown children overboard in a presumed ploy to secure rescue and passage to Australia. The government's handling of this and other events involving unauthorized arrivals worked to its advantage. The Tampa affair had led the government to adopt stricter border protection measures to prevent unauthorized arrivals from reaching Australia by boat. Polls indicated the measures had public support. The government was able to portray itself as strong on border protection measures and opponents as weak. In November 2001, the Liberal National Coalition was re-elected with an increased majority. The Australian Senate Select Committee for an inquiry into a certain maritime incident later found that no children had been at risk of being thrown overboard and that the government had known this prior to the election. The government was criticized for misleading the public and cynically exploiting voters' fears of a wave of illegal immigrants by demonizing asylum seekers. Don't worry, by the next election, people had forgotten about it, and he actually won and served another term as prime minister. Story 10. I heard this one in Hungary. From a year or two ago, a high-ranking but well-liked police officer disappeared after swimming in the really shallow lake here, Lake Balaton. The official search for him was disbanded after some time. After it was discovered, government officials were boating in the area where the man disappeared. But some of his fellow officers didn't give up because they really liked the guy. Finally, in a homeless shelter near Budapest, this guy was found, a total babbling mess, off his rocker from some kind of drug. Some Hungarian government types hit a guy swimming while they were partying on a boat, and then they covered it up by having the guy drugged into an amnesic state and dropped off at a shelter. Story 11. There was a murder here in Wales in '99. Not so widespread in the media, but it was very strange. Basically, 3 generations of a family got murdered in their home one night, and the police arrested a local guy who was a bit odd, and he got a life sentence. However, it turns out that he was too simple to have thought of things that seemed out of place at the scene. Things such as taking all of the light bulbs out of each of the rooms. It is said that after a brutal murder in a room, the light bulb absorbs the carbon produced, apparently. And a man who was known by the village as being dim surely wouldn't have had that thought cross his mind at the last minute. Also, on the mother of the children that got murdered, there were no marks that would reveal that she had tried defending herself, but she was beaten to death with something like a bat, and obviously, when getting attacked by a bat, you would try and at least defend yourself, wouldn't you? Or maybe you couldn't say if the person had awesome skills with a weapon. Where it gets weird is when you find out that although the mother had kids that were also murdered, she had become a lesbian over the years. and it is said that she started seeing a female police officer who was married to a senior policeman in the same force. It turns out that they had a massive falling out, and the mother, Mandy Power, threatened to reveal their affair. It also turns out that the female police officer taught martial arts in the local community, and that she worked in the crime scene investigation department, which explains the light bulbs. Story 12. Everyone outside of India thinks India's economy is booming, but the reality is that we have the same problems as the rest of the developed world, like inflation, high gas prices. The growth is slowing down to 6% now, and the government has no clue what it's doing, since almost all of this growth is coming from the private sector. The most painful fact is that India has been growing more crops than the giant 1.2 billion population needs, but the distribution is so rife with corruption that some of it is just rotting in granaries while people are starving. This part, of course, is covered up by the government. Story 13. Apart from the assassination of Olof Palme, which has been mentioned in a couple of comments already, the first conspiracies relating to Swedes that come to mind is the death of Dag Hammarskjöld, Secretary General of the UN, and the disappearance of Raoul Wallenberg, humanitarian who helped rescue prisoners during the World War II. A new theory was recently revealed regarding Wallenberg, that he was taken prisoner by the USSR because he was transporting large amounts of gold, silver, and jewelry in Red Cross vans. According to the theory, the USSR thought he was trying to keep gold away from them, while in reality it was supposedly jewelry that belonged to some of the prisoners he had rescued. And he was taking it away from Hungary to keep it safe until the region was stable, and he could return it to the owners. Story 14. In South Africa, we have the Vela incident and the crash of the Helderberg. The first refers to an unidentified double flash of light that was detected over the southern Atlantic Ocean in 1979. This was detected by a U.S. satellite and officially written off as a malfunction with the satellite. There is, however, speculation that it was a nuclear test done by either Israel or South Africa, or the two countries working together. The second incident concerns a commercial South African Airways flight that had a fire on board and crashed into the ocean to the east of Mauritius in 1987. The aircraft in question was a Combi-type aeroplane, with room for both passengers and cargo. The cause of the fire that started in the cargo hold is still undetermined, and speculation about possible causes range from red mercury and activated carbon to rocket fuel. The apartheid government made for a lot of good conspiracy theories. Story 15. In 2001, the entire ruling royal family of Nepal was assassinated, with some members that were spared their lives. It is said that the crown prince was the one who shot everyone, and then himself at first. Then a police investigation claimed that the automatic weapon went off accidentally and sprayed everyone. The survivors claim there was more than one gunman and wearing masks. To this day, no civilian believes that the crown prince would do such a thing. Instead, it is widely speculated that the brother of the then king, who later claimed the throne, was involved, as all of his family is still alive. Story 16. What happened to Josip Broz Tito? He was our leader and a dictator who made the only good communist country. You can ask any Yugoslav, he will tell you that his times in communist Yugoslavia were good. There are stories that he went to Spain after World War II and died in the Civil War, and that another Tito went to be the president of Yugoslavia. That's based on an urban legend that his mother recognized that he had a finger but he didn't have it. So there's the suspicion of two different Titos. Also, some say that before he died, in 1980, he really died some years before, and people were just holding the truth because of other countries and all the people. Story 17. German here, basically a high-ranking German politician, died under highly suspect circumstances by drowning in a bathtub in a Geneva hotel. It is still unclear whether he got murdered or committed suicide, the problem being that there is ample evidence and motivation for both. He was involved in Mossad arms deals, had weird connections to the Stasi intelligence service of the GDR. He was a West German conservative politician, as well as big personal problems due to an election scandal shortly before his death. It's so massive because of all the weird circumstances of his death and the fact that many big players of German politics seem involved. For example, 3 of Germany's biggest newspapers and news magazines are directly involved in the scandal and later death. Reporters from the infamous Bild tabloid helped him attack his political opponent, which was the scandal to begin with. Reporters from Der Spiegel uncovered it, but with such precise timing, days before an election, that many suspect and later confirmed foul play by the other party, who knew about the bold reporter's smear campaign but still denied knowledge. And finally, reporters from the Stern magazine who found his dead body in the hotel and decided to take some pictures before administering CPR. It sent shockwaves through the political landscape of Germany and is still seen as one of the biggest mysteries and scandals of post-World War II Germany. Story 18. In Australia, there is the Tamam Shud, unsolved death of an unknown man. The victim was found dead at 6:30 a.m. December 1st, 1948, under a street lamp at Somerton Beach in Australia. And with that, we have exhausted everything we know about the man. It's the things we don't know that have been baffling authorities ever since, including the meaning of the apparently uncrackable secret code he left behind. Things first started to lurch towards the creepy when police noticed that all his clothes' identification marks had been removed. They were eventually and painstakingly able to place a jacket to America, which was strange because his dental records and fingerprints didn't match anyone who'd ever lived there, or anywhere else in the world. It was like the guy had never existed. Essentially, he was a healthy guy and literally nothing wrong with him besides being lifeless. I believe they found no name on him or his possessions, but did find a piece of paper coming from a rare book found in the back of a car in the area. The book had a scribbled code in the back of it, which to this day, like the crime, remains unsolved. Story 19. In the UK, there's a conspiracy that Diana's death was really a political assassination. Fast forward 15 years, and some newspapers are still talking about it. In truth, it was press photographers who ended her. It was their reckless driving and their pursuit of the car that caused the car to go the speed it did. The car Diana was in swerved to avoid a slower car, which caused it to crash. The first people on the scene were a couple of paparazzi who were pursuing her. They spotted her in the wreckage, still alive, but instead of calling for help, they just started taking photos of her. When the emergency services arrived, they physically stopped them, getting to her saying something along the lines of, "This is how we get paid, so back off." If the photographers that actually got there first called for help right away and did not obstruct the emergency services when they did arrive, she would be alive today. Story 20. There is a conspiracy theory in Ghana which arose sometime during the late 1980s. The theory states that the Dutch never truly left the country in the late 1800s, and there is a significant population of Dutch people still remaining somewhere in the country. As a result, some people in Ghana treat Dutch tourists as their countrymen, whilst others are exceptionally hostile to Dutch travelers. This varies based on locations, so some places in Ghana are rarely, if ever, visited by the Dutch, while friendly areas are popular destinations. The theory is thought to have arisen when a group of Dutch tourists in the late 1980s were stranded in rural Ghana after their bus broke down. They were observed by the locals dwelling in makeshift shelters, hunting local wildlife, and essentially doing what a normal, rural, poor Ghanaian would be doing. Word spread orally throughout the country, and it has become a fact to many Ghanaians. In 2005, a small group of Ghanaian militant nationalists began a manhunt for the colonialist village Ses. They sent an official letter to the government of the Netherlands, informing them that failure to remove their lingering settlers would result in forced eviction upon discovery. Puzzled, the Dutch government sent a reply insisting that it has been quite some time since they had a presence in Ghana. This caused a sizable protest to break out in Accra, where many nationalists burned the flag of the Netherlands in front of cameras. The story, however, was more of an off-color novelty piece in the eyes of the mass media, and it received no attention by major news outlets. Following the protests, the nationalist group began a 4-year-long search throughout Ghana for the Dutch colonies. As expected, the group found absolutely nothing. The only Dutch people they found were the odd tourist. However, in late 2009, a small scouting unit discovered a Dutch expat living with his Ghanaian wife just outside of Agogo. The expat was taken hostage, and the nationalist group demanded a ransom from the Dutch government as repentance for their deception. Because the expat had forfeited his citizenship previously, the government of the Netherlands informed the group that they had no responsibility to the man, and they only hoped no violence would result. The group let the man go and shortly after was disbanded and became sort of a running joke amongst many Ghanaians, especially those friendly to the Dutch. Despite the failure of this group, the belief that the Dutch still have a notable presence in Ghana persists. Story 21. The Strategy of Tension. The strategy of tension, Italian strategia della tensione, is a theory that describes how to divide, manipulate, and control public opinion using fear, propaganda, disinformation, psychological warfare, agents provocateurs, and false flag terrorist actions. The theory began with allegations that the United States government and the Greek military junta of 1967 to 1974 supported far-right terrorist groups in Italy and Turkey, where communism was growing in popularity, to spread panic among the population, who would in turn demand stronger and more dictatorial governments. Citation needed. Story 22. I think the Russian Dyatlov Pass incident is almost on par with our Area 51. Don't read this if you're about to go to sleep. The Dyatlov Pass incident resulted in the deaths of 9 ski hikers in the northern Ural Mountains on the night of February 2nd, 1959. Soviet investigators determined only that a compelling unknown force had caused the deaths. Investigators at the time determined that the hikers tore open their tent from within, departing barefoot into heavy snow and a temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius. Although the corpses showed no signs of struggle, 2 victims had fractured skulls, 2 had broken ribs, and 1 was missing her tongue. Their clothing, when tested, was found to be highly radioactive. Story 23. I haven't seen the Netherlands yet, so here we go. The buzzing conspiracy. You Americans have had similar problems, for example, the village of Taos. But here's our story. A few years ago, 2005, people from Limburg, south of the Netherlands, in the Heerlen area, started to report a strange hum that was ever present. They heard it when walking, driving, when they went to bed, all the time. Someone posted this on a Dutch forum, fok.nl, and the story started rolling. Over 300 people complained, saying they heard the noise too. The government started an investigation mainly focused on 50-plus-year-olds. A popular scientific magazine, KIJK, also did an investigation. In the March 2006 publishing, they came up with the following. The American buzzing sounds were first attributed to sonar systems and secret weapons. KIJK came to the conclusion that something like a cooling fan could be the problem, since they emit a low buzzing sound like described by the residents. What those fans are cool, however, nobody knows, and nobody has found them. That's also because it is impossible to find a low-frequency emitter, since bass is omnidirectional. Story 24. A good majority of the educated population in South Korea knows that the sinking of the ship wasn't done by the North Koreans. The most widely believed alternative explanation is that it was sunk by natural causes. There's a whole scientific explanation behind this that I'm too lazy to look up, that basically compares the sinking with other incidents in the US Navy, where certain conditions can cause a ship to split in half. This happened slightly before an upcoming election in Korea, and many believe that the ruling party used the sinking as sensationalism to boost their conservative and highly anti-North Korean ideology. Sure enough, they won that next election. Some go further and support the whole inside job conspiracy, where the ship sinking wasn't accidental and the government actually sunk it themselves to spread anti-North Korean and pro-ruling party feelings. Some also believe that it was the US that accidentally an entire ship during a training exercise and pinned it on North Korea, hence why Obama was involved a bit too much in the whole investigation process. This is a fringe belief. I myself don't know what to believe, but I highly doubt that the North Koreans actually sank the Cheonan. Story 25. The 9 Unknown. Men of India, a secret society founded by an Indian emperor over 2,000 years ago, aimed at conducting advanced scientific research and hiding dangerous scientific knowledge from mankind. The 9 Unknown occasionally interfere in mankind's struggles by giving a new cure formula to a researcher, or giving progressive ideas to a politician. Each of the 9 has his own speciality: psychology, biology, microbiology, chemistry, communication, gravity, cosmology, light, and sociology. When one of them dies, the 9 find a new genius to replace him. They also have a secret base in the Himalayas where they conduct their research. Story 26. We have Chile's Plan Z cover-up. Communist President Salvador Allende was allegedly working with the Cuban army to go forward with his communist dictatorship by means of a self-coup d'etat against Chilean Congress and armed forces, and by creating a list of all citizens that would need to be eliminated, mainly right-wing leaders. Fun facts: this was allegedly going to be done on September 19th for the Armed Forces Parade, for which they were already instructed to change their traditional bullets for rubber bullets. The actual coup d'etat was performed by the armed forces on September 11th. That is 8 days prior to the alleged date for the execution of Plan Z.